We have a guest in the studio, a guy I've known for, I don't know how many years, but I would say a lot of years. We could probably sit here and compare notes about professional football and some guy named Brown for a long, long time. I was late of Paul Brown's career as a coach, and this guy was early as to Paul Brown's career as a coach. His name is Otto Graham, and before the Cincinnati Bengals existed here in Cincinnati, I think most of the people in the southwestern Ohio area were Cleveland Brown fans, and some are still offended that the Cincinnati Bengals are here, and all of those people up in Cleveland are, I think, are still looking for another team like Paul Brown put together with Otto Graham at quarterback. But he settled an argument for us at the beginning of his career in the old All-American Football Conference. His number was 60, of all things, and then finally settled on 14. But it's a pleasure to welcome to Sports Talk for the first time ever, Otto Graham. How you been, kid?
Bob, it's a pleasure being here. I've heard that you have done a great job down here in Cincinnati and that you dominate the airways at nighttime, and
yeah, well,
it's a pleasure to be
now
on.
You're going to find out the truth. Now you're going to find out the truth.
Okay.
It's been a couple of 3 years since I have seen you, and generally when I do see you, it's on the golf course. You are now retired.
I usually find you in the rough, don't I? Or in the woods.
Well,
Okay.
Farm kid, you know. I
Yeah,
go back
I
to my
know.
roots. I don't like cut grass. I
Yeah.
prefer that long stuff.
Yeah.
But you're now retired, no longer the athletic director at the Coast Guard Academy.
No, I retired at the end of '84, actually, so I've been retired now a year and about 4 or 5 months. And I'm enjoying it. I'm going to spend my winters in Sarasota, Florida, and my summers in Connecticut, so roughly 6 months in both places.
Gee, tough, Otto, tough.
Yeah, I'm what is known as a snowbird down
Yeah,
there in
snowbird.
Sarasota, and
Until
loving
you-
every moment of it.
Until you have two winters down there, and then all of a sudden you're a local and everybody else is
Well,
a
I have a
snowbird, right?
sneaking hunch that over the years I'm going to spend a little more time each year in Florida and less time in Connecticut because we enjoyed it this year, no question about it.
Yeah, Otto, I was doing a little looking, and I know some things about you, but you've spent almost all of your adult life around athletics, playing for the Browns in the American Football Conference, the old All-American Football Conference, and coaching the Redskins, and then coaching the College All-Star team, and then
Coaching the Coast Guard Academy
coaching
team,
the
and
Coast Guard
also
Academy.
being athletic director
athletic
there.
director. I mean, athletics is something that you just can't get
There's
out of your system.
no
huh?
question about it. Everything I have in this world today is due directly or indirectly to athletics and football especially. No question about that. And so I wouldn't go back and change my lifestyle for anything. I've enjoyed it very thoroughly.
You were raised in Waukegan, Illinois.
Yes, myself, along with people like Jack Benny, and in case anybody wants to know, Jack Benny was before me. I'm not the same age. And good old Waukegan, though, it's a great town. I enjoyed there. My mother and father were both teachers there. My father was the band director. And so I have a lot of fond memories of Waukegan.
Yeah, you went to Northwestern, graduated, played in the National Basketball League for the Rochester Royals, which became the Cincinnati Royals.
That's right. And then from here they went out to Kansas City Kings, and then just a year ago I guess they went out to Sacramento.
Yeah, you were telling me before we went on the air, you won a championship. That was your rookie season with the Rochester Royals?
45-46 basketball season was the year I played with them, and my teammates were Red Holzman, the former coach of the Knicks, Bob Davies, Al Serby, George Galamick. We also had Chuck Connors, the rifleman, on TV,
No joke.
and so forth. And we had a good basketball team.
Why'd you stop playing? Why'd you stop playing basketball?
Well, the league had not started. The All-American Conference wasn't due to start until '46. And so when I got out of the service, I was a Navy Air Corps as a cadet down in Pensacola. The war ended, and they gave us the chance of getting out right away or going home or staying in, get your wings, going home, and so forth. And I had plans to get married right away, so I went home. Didn't care about the wings, quite frankly, even though I only had 2 more months to go, roughly. And I got home, and I got a phone call from the guy who ran the Rochester Royals, wanted me to play pro basketball. Offered me a contract for $5,000, and $5,000 back in 1945 was an awful lot of money. And
That's
so
a nice
I
dowry,
played.
too. It pays for a lot of drapes.
Yeah, that's true. And so I played pro basketball that year, and we had a good team. And we knocked off the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons, who had been the
Say that again, the who?
Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons. And
who turned out to be the Detroit Pistons.
They were the champions of pro basketball back in those days, and I think we played them about 10 times a year, beat them 7. Anyway, make a long story short, we knocked them off in the semifinals, and I think we beat Oshkosh or Sheboygan to get us in the finals, and we ended up champions. And so then, of course, the following year, I played football with the Browns, and that overlapped with basketball, and so you couldn't do both. And I enjoyed football more anyway, because in basketball in those days you traveled by train, and you're away from home, maybe 25 nights out of the month, and so forth. And of course, as you know, in football, Bob, you're away for 1 or 2 nights every 2 weeks, and that's about it. So it's much more conducive to good home life in basketball, or excuse me, rather than football rather than basketball.
Excuse my ignorance, but were you drafted by the Cleveland Browns?
No, they were. When I was drafted by Detroit Lions. See, I went to college with a basketball scholarship, first of all, and didn't even play football my freshman year. And so I played intramural football, and they went on and did pretty good, of course. And so I went out for spring football, and then I went out for baseball after that to get out of spring football and all that kind of stuff. And but Detroit never even bothered contacting me because.
What year were you drafted?
Well, let's see. My last year of football was 43, so I was drafted right after that, I suppose. And
do you remember what round? I mean, didn't they have 30-round drafts back then?
To tell you the truth, I don't even know. I guess I was drafted in the first round, but I'm not even sure. I honestly don't know. And I didn't even know who had drafted me, to be honest about it. And because I was going off to war and that kind of stuff, I dodged the draft for about a couple of years because the head of the draft board in Chicago was a former mayor of Evanston, so I know he kept taking my name and putting it in the bottom of the pile so I could continue playing football and basketball there at Northwestern. And so I went off to war, and so when I came back, as I say, I played the 1 year of basketball, then football started.
Well, we're still missing something here. What did Paul Brown know about you to draft you or to pick you up or to sign you or whatever he did?
Well, when I was at Northwestern, Paul Brown was the head football coach at Ohio State. And obviously we played against Ohio State, and we beat them, I guess, every time we played against them when Paul was there. And I played pretty well against his team, and I left a good impression, I guess, on Paul when I played against him. And so when he decided to form this league or this team and join the new All-American Conference, he was in the Navy, by the way, up at Great Lakes, which is right next to Waukegan, my hometown. And I was at Great Lakes. No, excuse me. I was at Glenview Naval Air Station, flying there, which is only about 30 miles away from Great Lakes, and also right outside Evanston. And he came down and see me one night. He's a lieutenant, and I'm just a little old cadet, in the Navy Air Corps. And he said to me, "We're going to start a new league as soon as the war ends." And he said, "We're going to have this football team, and I want you to be my quarterback." And I said, "Well, that pleases me very much. I'm nice that you think."
Had you ever met him before?
No, not really. And he said that here's what I'll do for you financially. Now, and as I say, I had not heard from the Detroit Lions at all because they had no reason to contact me because there's no other league anyway. He said to me, "I will give you a $1,000 bonus for signing a contract right now." He said also, "I'll give you a 2-year contract for $7,500 a year." Now, mind you, Bob, I'm making $75 a month as a cadet in the Navy Air Corps. Of course, I don't pay for my food and lodgings and my fuel when I fly, but only $75 a month. And he said, in addition to that, and this was the clincher, he said, "I will start sending you a check every month as long as the war lasts. I'll send you a check every month for $250. My next statement was, "Where do I sign?"
Where do I sign? Yes.
Because when you're making $75 a month, that's like finding a gold mine, but the sad part about it is that war only lasted 6 more months. You know that? Now, I say that, of course, jokingly, because speaking very selfishly, I could have made a lot more money if that war had lasted longer. Of course, we saved, thousands and thousands of lives having the war end like that. But so anyway, I started off then, the very first year of the Browns in 1946, was paid $7,500. We won the championship, and Paul Brown called me in at the end of the season. And, of course, Paul Brown, and I know Paul Brown. And I was scared to death. My wife, Bev, was still scared of him, quite frankly. And so I wondered, why is he calling me in? Because I thought I had a good year. We won a championship, so forth and so on. And I go in there, and he says, "You did a great job. I'm tearing up your contract. I'm going to give you $12,000 next year." Well, I was a Paul Brown man for life after that.
How about Bev?
Oh yes, too. But she's still nervous around him. You
Sure.
know. Anyway, so my salary went up in increments anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, and in 1954 I retired. Told them I had enough, wanted to quit. I told them I'd come back if they lost a quarterback, thinking they might break their leg and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I wanted to quit on top and so forth. Well, they had a quarterback, I forgot his name offhand now, who signed a contract both in Canada and with the Browns. They took it to court, and the Canadian team won out, so therefore he lost the quarterback forever. So he asked me to come back, and I promised I would. So I said, I'll come back, Paul, after you make the West Coast trip if you don't find a quarterback, So I really didn't want to come back. Well, later I realized he didn't try very hard because...
How old were you then?
Well, let's see, I was 33.
33.
And when he came back, didn't have a quarterback, I had to fulfill my obligation, and I promised I'd come back, and I did. And, of course, we won the championship again. So, anyway, I had made $22,000 in 1954. So I did a good job, I thought, negotiating. Got him for $25,000 in 1955. And I was told I was the highest paid player in the league at the time, which I probably was. And, of course, $25,000 now would be probably wouldn't even take care of your bonus, Bob, when you played. But
whoa! Guess again. Guess again.
$25,000 in '55 was probably equivalent now to what, 400,000 somewhere in that area maybe, and nothing like the millions they're paying out, of course. But and I came back and played for $25,000. We won a championship again, defeated the Rams at this time, and so I said, Paul, this time I'm retiring. No promises. I'm going to stay retired regardless. So that's very quickly what I did.
Yeah. Well, the thing about, let me tell you one story about Paul Brown when and then we got to go to commercial and we'll continue our conversation here. You mentioned that he called you in and you were scared of him. This was about 74, maybe 73 or 74. I'm at work in the off season at a local department store here, and there was a my name is broadcast over the
loudspeaker.
The loudspeaker in the department store. Mr. Trumpy, an important phone call. Please come to the office. So I go to the office and I pick up the phone thinking it's an emergency call from home or something, and Paul Brown's secretary says, hang on for Coach Brown. And in that, it was only 8 or 10 seconds, but it seemed like 8 or 10 days. And then 8 or 10 seconds, my entire life flashed before my eyes. He traded me to Buffalo. He traded me someplace. I didn't know what it was. And I get on and he says, is this Bob Trumpy? And I said, yeah. And he said, listen, I got a friend up in Dayton who runs a golf tournament. His name is Cy Lauder. And he was wondering if there was anyone on the team who could play golf who would like to come up to the golf tournament. And I said, yes. And he said, I'm inviting you. Can you make it? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, I'll tell him you're on. And he hung up. And I sat there for a good 2 minutes with the phone in my ear, making sure that what I heard was I was going to Dayton and not Buffalo to play at a golf tournament.
I understand. Back when Paul and I laugh about this because back when I played for him, I couldn't understand some things he did at that time. There were times I loved him, times I hated him, quite frankly. But years later, of course, now I'm very happy I played for him because I love the guy. I mean, I think he's as great a coach as ever coached the game myself.
Yeah.
And
he used to play in the Bogey Busters. Will he be?
He does. This year, this year he's going to miss it because either a granddaughter, somebody is graduating from college or something, and he has to go this year. So this is the first one he will have missed in many, many years.
Yeah. Otto Graham is our guest, former quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. When they won on a regular basis, as Otto said, we won another championship, and then we won another championship, and then I came back and we won another championship. And Otto Graham's story does not end there. He's got another big opponent we'll talk about as we continue Sports Talk here on Thursday night. Sports Talk on a Thursday night continues with Otto Graham, number 14 of the Cleveland Browns. How many championships did your teams win when you were there, Otto?
Well, the first 10 years of our existence, we were in the championship game every year for 10 straight years, and we won 4 straight in the All-American Conference, and then we won 3 out of 6 in the NFL, so we won 7 out of 10.
What'd you do with all those rings, or did they give you rings?
Back in our days, Bob, they didn't give us rings. They gave a little tie clasp or whatever and so forth and so on, not like they do these days.
Nothing like that.
But in all fairness, quite frankly, though, the competition is so much tougher today. We had great teams and great coaching, great players and so forth, but to win 10 in a row, that'll probably never happen again because it's just too much competition these days.
Yeah. The other thing is too, there's certainly no doubt that you had some talented teammates yourself. And how many guys from any teams that you played on are now in the Hall of Fame?
Well, let's see. Myself and Lou Groza, Lavelli, I think
Bill Willis. McCormick.
Marion Motley, Mike McCormick. My gosh,
Bobby Mitchell played on the team, although he
didn't play.
He didn't play
back
much.
when I played, but yeah, he played. But he
didn't play when you played.
No,
he was after you. That's right.
No, he's young.
Yeah.
He's young.
Was Hudson? No, Hudson was with Green Bay. I got the wrong
Hudson's
team.
Green Bay, right?
So that's about 4 or 5 guys.
And they're right. I offhand I can't think of it, but there are others probably. I'm sure we've been. Of course, Paul himself is in the Hall of Fame, and Frank Gatsky just went in.
Oh yeah,
Frank Gatsky just went in, and so there are quite a few.
Yeah. Do you get to see those guys very often?
I see them. I see Lavelli, for example, at the Bogey Busters golf tournament every year, and Paul, and I see Lou Groza once in a while, and I saw Frank Gatsky at his induction. I went down for that. Had to go down for that one. And I see a few of them around the league when they football games. The guys who are now coaching that kind of stuff, but not too often.
Yeah. Well, you've been a TV star of late. Let's get to another phase of your life.
Okay.
You've been a TV star of late, pushing a product called Early Detector because you played a lot of opponents, but one snuck up on you. When did this happen? When were you diagnosed as having colon cancer?
Well, it happened 8 years ago in March. I had my operation. And very frankly, being in the service like I was in the Coast Guard, I'm required to take an annual physical. And so I had skipped the proctoscope for 2 years in a row because it's uncomfortable. And my predecessor at the academy as athletic director had died from rectal cancer, colorectal cancer. And so I was aware of this. And so I had exercised there and strained myself in the tailbone area. And so it persisted for the pain for a couple of days. So I went back in after my 2 months after my examination during the Christmas holidays, which I always had during that period of time to save all the rigmarole with all the cadets being around there and so forth. And they examined me with a proctoscope, and they came up with a suspicious area, and they took a biopsy, and the guy told me at the time, the doctor, that from his experience, that he thought he could have cancer. And of course, I came back, and I did have cancer. And it's one of those things. Up to that time, I was like everybody else, like most people in this world, they mention cancer, and they say it's never going to happen to me. It's going to happen to the guy across the street, or the guy next door, but never me. Me, a big shot, has-been athlete, don't drink, don't smoke, couldn't possibly happen to me. Well, Bob, I learned very quickly it can happen to anybody. Cancer does not discriminate. It doesn't care whether you're black, white, Protestant, Catholic, Jew, and like you, a quarterback like me, male, female. That makes no difference. And what I do now, very frankly, is travel all over the country for Warner Lambert Corporation, and we're promoting a product called Early Detector, because early detection of the disease is the best thing going for you. And the Early Detector product, you use like toilet paper, quite frankly, and after you use it, you spray a prepared solution on it, and the area around the fecal matter on the paper will turn blue within 60 seconds if there is hidden blood in the stool. And that is the key, hidden blood in the stool. When I say hidden blood, it's blood you cannot see with naked eye. And that is one of the early symptoms of colorectal cancer, as I said. And so if that happens, by all means go see a doctor and get checked out, and you can buy this product for around $7. And I also say all the time, I don't care if you buy our product, we just think ours is the best because other products, you have to dip down the toilet bowl with a stick, a tongue depressor type of thing, and get a piece of the fecal matter and put it on a slide and so forth. Well, most people don't like fishing in a toilet bowl for fecal matter.
As a matter of fact, Otto, not a lot of people like talking about this at all.
That's true. And
the proctoscope is not something that's on your list of things to do in the next lifetime.
That's true.
You don't include that one.
We call that the silver stallion in the service.
The silver stallion.
Yeah.
Whatever
but
it
anyway,
is.
But they should do it, especially if they're 40 years and older, because 98% of the people who have a colorectal cancer are 40 years and older. And the sad part about that is that 75% of those people could save their lives if they detected it early enough, And there's going to be roughly 59,000 people, Bob, who are going to die from colorectal cancer this year, and that is more people than will die in automobile accidents in this whole country.
Yeah. Now, Otto, I would think for you, and I find myself in this situation. I played 4 years of college football, 4 years of high school football, 10 years of professional football. That's 18 years total. And part of playing professional football, more than college and more than high school, is your invincibility.
Right.
No matter how injured you are, no matter what they do to you on last Sunday, you're probably going to be able to survive and get out there on the next Sunday. At 41, which I am now, I don't take care of myself the way I should because of that feeling of invincibility I got from athletics. That, you know,
I had the same feeling.
I took some tremendous collisions
Yeah.
and survived. This is not going to get me.
That's right. I had the same feeling, and there's no question. Most people have that feeling, you know. But I found out that that's not true. Cancer can hit anybody. And to put it very bluntly, you're a darn fool if you don't get a regular checkup. Well, take Vince Lombardi, for example. Now, here's another great coach, you know, in Paul Brown's category, this guy is. And as great a coach as he was, yet when it came to his own personal health, to put it very bluntly, he was stupid. Here's a guy who had the same thing I had. And yet he had the symptoms and so forth, would not go see a doctor, refused to go, and by the time he finally went, it was too late. He'd gone through his entire system. He died.
I didn't know that he had colorectal cancer.
Yeah, that's what he had. And it is foolish not to, you know, to do something like this. And by the way, I can give them a number if they want to call and get further information on this. There's a number they call. This is actually in New Jersey, but it's a toll-free number: 1-800-334-3577. Anytime from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Again, 1-800.
What information do they get there?
They'll get a free booklet on colorectal cancer.
Oh, okay.
We call
Go
it
ahead.
beatable cancer.
Yeah, give the number
A
again.
free booklet, all this information they want to call 1-800-334-3577, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And I cannot emphasize that too strongly because I go around different hospitals and talk to patients, you know, who've just had, like I've had an operation, have a colostomy like I have now, and tell them, hey, don't worry about the colostomy. That's nothing. Worry about the cancer, because that's what to worry about, you know. And so early detection is the key. It really is.
Well, Otto, 8 years ago when they diagnosed this, what was the range of emotions you went through? I mean, did you consider yourself a dead duck as soon as they told you?
Well, I used to think, you know, cancer means death. You know, that's the feeling most people had. But of course,
or still have.
Yeah, but in recent years, I've learned that it doesn't mean death if you get it early enough. That's the important thing. But you know, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I played football for 10 years as a pro, having been in 10 straight championship games. You know, the years we won, I'm on cloud 9. But the years we lost, those 3 times we lost, as you know, when you lose a ball game, very important ball game, you sink emotionally down to depths which is almost impossible to describe, you know. And being a quarterback and being the so-called one of the key personnel on the team, those 3 times we lost, I didn't want to see anybody, talk to anybody. I wanted to hide, stick my head in the sand somewhere and just forget about the world, you know. And so when I learned I had cancer, I think emotionally I wasn't as disturbed as I was back in those days when I played football, because I think my pro football days conditioned me to, because you know yourself, every weekend is a crisis in football, you know. If you lose a game, you know, my gosh, you feel terrible, and so you fight back next week to try and overcome that and so forth. So it's ups and downs every doggone year, or every week, I should say. And I think that helped me emotionally very much. I was sure I was down in the dumps, but not to the same extent that you might think I would have been. Oh, I just made up my mind, what can I do to overcome this? And, you know, I'll do anything I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, there wasn't much I could do, just I pray, and lucky they got it in time in my case. If I'd waited another, I had this checkup, my second checkup in February, and I had an operation latter part of February. I had my operation in middle of March. If I had waited 10 more months for the following Christmas to have my next exam, there's no question I'd be dead by now, because I had just broken through the intestinal wall. And of course, everybody now has seen diagrams in the front page of newspapers when Reagan had his cancer and so forth. They thoroughly understand it, and it really took it out of the closet.
Yeah.
And you know, I could talk on your show here, Bob, for every day for 7 days straight, 7 weeks straight, 7 months straight, and we would have the impact. And we would talk some people into going to get checked up, no question about that. We'd save some lives, but nothing like the reaction that came from Reagan having his publicity and so forth, because I'm sure his having had cancer saved thousands of lives. People went out right away and got checkups, called their doctor, or bought product like Early Detector and did something about it. See?
Yeah. Well, Otto, you are a picture of health. I think I first met you, I'm guessing now, but this is 85. It's got to be 15 years ago,
yes.
the first time I met you.
Yeah.
Physically, you have not changed in looks. You have not changed in
Well,
in
the
physical
hair's a
build.
little thinner.
Yeah, but I mean, but most people have a picture of someone who is recovering from cancer, as being thin in the face, lost hair, physically changed a great deal. You have not in any way, shape, or form that I know of. And
Well,
I mean, I don't know you
yeah,
that well,
yeah.
Otto, but looking at you,
Well,
you're graying at the temples, but at 64 years old, you look a picture of health.
Well, it's been 8 years, and so and when you have cancer, the first big hurdle is 2 years. If you live for 2 years, then that's a big hurdle. And most people say, most doctors say, if you live for 5 years, then in all probability you will get hit by a car here in Cincinnati, for example, and get killed rather than die from cancer. But if there is a history of cancer in anybody's family, anybody in that family is 3 times more apt to have cancer than a family who doesn't have.
Well,
a
you're
history
now
of
an
cancer.
expert on cancer, aren't you? You used to be
Well,
on football,
I
now
know a
you're
lot
an
more
expert
about
on
it than I
cancer.
did. People ask me, well, what about diets and so forth? I said, I'm not a doctor, but I am convinced after all I've read and heard and so forth that diet is a factor. I eat a lot less red meats now. I eat a lot more chicken, fish, and so forth, and I eat a lot of fibrous foods, and that type of thing. And I take better care of myself now, no question about it.
Well, Otto, I got to tell you, and I don't mind admitting this to you, that at a golf tournament somewhere where you were not you were not present, mutual friend, don't remember who it was, haven't the slightest idea, said, "Did you hear that Otto Graham has cancer?" And everybody goes, "Oh my God!" The next year you were back at that golf tournament, and I said, "That guy last year lied to me. Otto Graham could not have had cancer because in a year's time." I don't know what you went through. Did you take chemotherapy too?
No, I had my operation in Bethesda Naval Hospital down outside of Washington, D.C., and the doctor, the head of the hospital who helped in the operation, said to me, "We're pretty sure we got it all. It had broken through, but just broken through, and we only found evidence of cancer in one lymph gland, which is right next to the tumor. So my advice to you is not to take chemotherapy and the radiation because the side effects can be very devastating."
Mm-hmm.
Of course, other doctors there, people in the chemotherapy department and radiation department said, by all means do this. But I never did take this, so luckily, and the doctor was right, and so I haven't had to worry about that part of it. But I've been lucky, no question about that. But what I'm doing now is going around the countryside telling people, don't rely upon being as lucky as I was. Check yourself regularly, every doggone year if you're 40 years and older. And I say to you, Bob, because you're 41, as you said, you're a darn fool, quite frankly, if you don't, go see a doctor or get a product like Early Detector and check yourself, because for a small price of $7 for the product or whatever, take the time to do it, because as I said, we can convince just one individual watching this or listening to this program tonight, and go take the exam and saves their life. Then, quite honestly, my trip here has been well worthwhile.
Yeah, I had a doctor approach me about this when I mentioned that you were coming on the program, and he said there is a terrible misconception amongst most people about this disease, and that is that the first thing that has to be done is you bend over the table at the doctor's office. He says, "I guarantee you that if you use one of those early detection things that are on the market, that proctoscope is going to look damn good to you, not bad to you, if the test proves positive, because you've done yourself a hell of a favor." The first section that you do, the first test, is in your own privacy. That's not embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go in to see the proctologist, there's nothing to that, because all of a sudden you absolutely want to know what's there.
Well, it's amazing to me, for example, I've learned so many facts about this since I've got involved, but roughly 9 out of 10 doctors will actually recommend that you take a blood and stool test every year. They recommend this. But yet those very same doctors who recommend this, just less than 50% of them actually prescribe this to their patients. So that's a stat that's hard for me to understand, and I have reached a stage in life now, and I might be offending some doctors, but I think any doctor myself who examines somebody who's 40 and older, if they don't insist that individual take the Procto, and so forth, and along with the rest of it, if they don't insist upon that, quite honestly, in my opinion, the guy's incompetent to some degree. I believe that very strongly.
Otto, does your information tell us that more males than females will contract colorectal
No,
cancer?
my information, from what I have heard, there is no difference. There is no difference, really. The same. It doesn't discriminate at all, male or female.
Otto Graham is our guest. We'll continue our conversation on Sports Talk, and for all you people out there who used to be Cleveland Brown fans, You're going to date yourself by remembering when Otto Graham played, especially if you saw him play with number 60. But we'll give you an opportunity to talk to one of professional football's greatest players, Otto Graham, at 749-3420 if you wish to call. If not, I don't mind talking to Otto. I really don't.
Lines are now open for 700 WLW Sports Talk. If you're calling from outside Ohio, dial 1-800-543-0471. From Ohio, dial 1-800-582-1701. And from the greater Cincinnati area, dial 749-3420. Once again, here's 700 WLW's Bob Trumpy.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome back to Sports Talk, 749-3420 if you wish to join us with Otto Graham, former Cleveland Browns quarterback. If not, fine. I don't care. We got 2 hours to talk with you after 7 o'clock. We'll do that. I'll sit and talk with Otto. I think we've got the information in here on early detector and also on colorectal cancer, and I know that's what you speak about, but I think you're probably known best as an athlete.
Before I get off, let me give them the number once
Go
more.
ahead,
Bob,
go
okay?
ahead, go ahead.
You want to call and get a free booklet on colorectal cancer, the beatable cancer we call it. Call anytime from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays, that is. It's 1-800-334-3577. Okay.
All right. You know, there's another guy out there competing on a regular basis who beat cancer too, and that's Gene Littler.
Yes,
he
yes,
had
yes.
the lymph node cancer.
He had much worse than I did. No question about that. If you're going to have any type of cancer, I'm the colon cancer. Mine was the best to have, quite frankly.
If there can be the best kind of cancer
Yeah,
to
that's
have,
true. Yeah.
that's what you're saying. Do you do anything to keep yourself in shape? Because I marvel. You're 64 years old. You look in tremendous shape. You really do.
Well, I get up in the morning and I exercise a little bit. I do push-ups and sit-ups and stretching exercises, and I run on a trampoline for maybe 25, 30 minutes.
Run on a trampoline. One of those little things in your...
Yeah, about 3 feet wide, and go out and we'll walk for 30 minutes, my wife and I, and that kind of stuff. But sometimes I do the trampoline. I try to exercise now, and I'm not in great shape. But of course, quarterbacks never have been in great shape. That includes Anderson and everybody else. But Jurgensen, who used to play for me,
Billy Kilmer.
Billy Kilmer, But,
how about Johnny Unitas?
Johnny was in pretty good shape.
Oh,
I
come
think.
on.
But,
first time I saw him at the end of his career, but we were at the American Airlines Golf Classic.
Yeah.
We were playing in Arizona, and I saw John at the swimming pool, and I said, wait a minute. I know whose head that is, but whose body has he got on? That cannot be Johnny Unitas. That's not underneath that uniform.
Well, anyway, but I stay in pretty good shape. And, of course, I don't drink or smoke. Either one, never have.
Yeah,
and,
you also have played a lot of golf throughout your life.
I play golf, and I play tennis, too, and so I exercise.
Yeah. We got some people here who want to talk to you.
Okay,
I know
good.
probably old Cleveland Brown fans. We'll not hold that against them.
Probably Aspinwall.
What?
Never a friend of mine lives down this road.
Who is it?
Aspinwall.
Bob, you're first with Otto Graham. Go ahead. You're on Sports Talk.
Hi, Bob. Thank you. I'm a first-time caller from Monroe, Ohio, and I wanted to ask Mr. Graham how his son David's doing. I went to school with David in 1969, 70, and 71 at Miami University, and I was his roommate there freshman year at Anderson Hall, and I kind of lost touch, in the last 9 or 10 years, and I just wondered what David was doing now. And
Well, David has been up at the Phillips Andover Academy outside of Boston in Andover, and for 8 years, and head football coach. He just left there, is going to Selwyn School, which is in Denton, Texas, about 30 miles outside of Dallas. He's moving there this summer and will start there this fall.
As a football coach?
No, as an administrator.
As an administrator.
Oh, okay. Is he still married to Mary?
He's married to Mary, and they have 3 children. Got to get my family's mixed up here. He has 3 children, 2 girls and a boy.
No kidding.
So you're a grandfather.
I'm a grandfather 14 times.
14 times? Shame on you. For God's sakes.
It's the water, Bob.
Yeah, it's the water. I know. I know it's the vacations. Bob, anything else?
No, sir. That's all I wanted. If Mr. Graham could just, if he ever talks to Dave or sees him in the near future, tell him Bob Bretland said hi.
Bretland?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll do it, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks for your phone call. I didn't realize that David went to Miami University.
Yes,
So did my brother.
Yes. Great school.
Yeah.
Great school.
Yeah, I was afforded that luxury. My brother's 12 years younger than I am, and I was playing ball here in Cincinnati, and he chose Miami University, and I finally got to know who my brother is when he enrolled at school, because when I left home in Springfield, he's a kid, just starting school. He was a rugrat in my way. I didn't At 18, I didn't want anything to do with him. I finally found out who he is. That's a nice school.
Very great school.
Otto Graham is our guest. We'll continue Sports Talk with you, 749-3420. We'll get to you folks right there. Just wait just a minute. Back with Sports Talk, and tonight our guest, and Otto's going to stay till about 7:30. Otto Graham is the gentleman I'm speaking of. More number 60 in the All-American Conference, and then a little more reasonable number for a quarterback, number 14 for the Cleveland Browns. And they won championships.
Bob, before you get next caller, Bob Bretler just called me. Bob, if you're still listening, my son David will also be up at Dayton tonight, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the Bogey Buster Golf Tournament. So if you want to contact him up there, go up there, and he'll be on at the Kitty Hawk Golf Course, and that's where he'll be if you want to contact him.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Doug, do you know where Monroe, Ohio is? Mark, do you know where Monroe, Ohio is? I don't know how far that is from Dayton. Anyway, back to the phones we go with... Frank, you're next with Otto Graham. Go ahead on Sports Talk.
Hello, Bob.
Yeah.
Frank.
Caller. Yeah. Okay, Frank.
Let me talk to Otto.
Go ahead, I'm right here.
Otto, I used to watch you back in the 50s when you played at Cleveland. And I have a favorite expression I'd like to convey to other people here in case you don't know it. The only player that ever walked on the football field with a white uniform on walked back off with that same white uniform.
Well, Frank, you didn't realize it's in my contract they could not touch me, see? And so, quite honestly, one reason why I set so many records because my teammates gave me great protection.
I knew that.
No question about that. And there are some games that I didn't hit the ground. And quite frankly, that's the way to play the game. Never hit the ground. That's the best way to play the game. No question about that.
I never was afforded that luxury.
I used to watch you waiting for the time when you would hit the ground. You never did.
I enjoyed that as much as you did.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
Frank, that produces a lot of championships when your quarterback walks off the field with a clean
That's very true.
uniform.
Very
No
true.
question about it. Thanks for your phone call.
I agree with you.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of your time in Cleveland, I was mentioning before the program, my father-in-law, who is visiting from Palm Springs, was mentioning that he was at the game where you got blasted in the face. You were running to the sideline, and it appeared to be a flagrant hit out of bounds. And from that came the invention of the face mask that Paul Brown was known so best for.
Very true. Very true.
Do you remember who hit you and who you played?
There was a guy by the name of Mihailovic, I think it was, from the 49ers. And he knocked me out right in front of the bench. And, of course, that was the worst thing that ever happened to the 49ers because at that time they were beating us. Our team got so fired up that they came back from that time on. They started playing 110% intensity, and we ended up beating them. I remember I came back in the second half. I woke up in the locker room there. Doc Ippolito sewing my face up, and
where'd you get cut? I don't see the scars.
It was in my mouth. Just the flesh. I had 12 stitches, I guess it was, and it didn't hurt me and so forth. In fact, my wife and I had a TV show, and the following day, Monday, we had the greatest Hooper rating ever because everyone to see how because the picture in the paper looked like I had just had my whole jaw just crushed, but it was just blood dripping around, had dried and so forth, and so. I remember I did a commercial the very next day, and blood started dripping on my mouth as I was talking. So I'm the only guy who ever bled for a sponsor on the TV.
But in order to make
the face mask itself, they designed a face mask for me for the next game, and it was a solid piece of plastic about a half-inch thick and about 2 inches tall, and they folded it around in front of my face and so forth. I couldn't see through it. I couldn't breathe, and anyway, it didn't work at all. And Paul Brown then, after the season, asked a local inventor to come up with something, weighed a couple ounces and round and very lightweight and all that kind of stuff. And they did. And Paul Brown, of course, had the patent. The patent, and I'm the guy who wore the first face mask in the history of football.
Yeah.
And from that first single bar, it was evolved what you now have in football.
Were you labeled by a lot of your teammates as sissy for wearing that face mask? Because you were the only one.
No, not at all. Because, but I didn't like it, quite honestly.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like it. Well, not that first one, but after that, I'm not one of these guys who say you're not a man until you get your teeth knocked out. That's ridiculous.
But you have all your teeth. You didn't get any knocked out, did you?
I never had them knocked out. Nope.
There's a lot of guys I have met over the years who played in the 50s who have someone else's teeth in their mouth.
Yep.
Most of them do.
I'm glad I'm not one of them.
Yeah. Otto Graham is a guest. Who did you say was on line one? Elmer, you're next with Otto Graham. Go ahead.
Real good. I'm a first-time caller.
Pleasure to have you on the air, Elmer.
I used to watch you in the 50s and the 40s. And I think one of the greatest fullbacks I ever saw was Marion Motley.
Well, you won't get any argument from me, quite honestly, because I think he was great.
Yeah.
I think myself he's the best fullback the Browns ever had.
Yeah. I lived in Pittsburgh.
Wait a minute. Does that include Jimmy Brown?
That includes Jimmy Brown.
That includes Jimmy Brown.
Jimmy Brown was a great runner.
But this
Period.
guy was a power man.
Motley was a great all-around player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would block. Motley would block. Motley would catch. Motley would do anything. He'd run over you. He'd run around you.
That's
He'd run
right.
through you.
That's right. Go ahead.
Otto, I had a colon cancer this February without any bleeding. It was discovered because I got sick to my stomach and was vomiting bile. And I'm 75 years old. And there never was any blood. Not a speck of blood.
Well, of course, as I say, that's one symptom, hidden blood in the stool. But there are other things. You know, if you have change in bowel habits or in something in the abdomen, pain like you had and so forth, if you have constant diarrhea or constipation for 2 weeks or more, I mean, there are all kinds of different things. But most people never know they have cancer. This is true. That's why the annual checkup is so important.
Well, Elmer, you sound lucky, son.
I was lucky.
Unless this is a hell of a long-distance phone call, sounds like you've got it licked, right?
I was very lucky.
Yeah.
We were both lucky, and so let's continue our luck, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Elmer.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Yeah, we're coming up on 7, and Otto Graham will be here until 7:30. So we'll continue to take your phone calls. We have one line available at 749-3420 if you wish to talk to Otto Graham. I don't know why you wouldn't. And we'll continue sports talk from the home of the Reds and Kentucky basketball. It's now 7 o'clock in Cincinnati, Ohio. I don't mean to include you in this, Christy, but I will. Otto Graham's granddaughter, Christy, is sitting here. Have you ever seen your grandfather on film play football?
Yes.
Did you? What film did you see? Do you have any idea what you showed her, Otto?
Well, I have highlights of different things and so forth and so on. So she's seen, those slow motion black and white jobs that we have.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to agree with that, Christy.
Oh.
No, that's all right. But
Okay.
do you have any idea just how good a football player your grandfather was?
Yes and no. I know that he was a very good football player, but I don't really think of it that way. I just think of him as my grandfather.
Yeah.
What kind of grandfather am I? Maybe
Very good.
I shouldn't ask that question. Okay, Chris, sit there and be quiet now.
I think there are a lot of grandkids who don't realize just how great an athlete their grandfather might be. I mean, you're not the only guy who is in the Hall of Fame with 14 grandkids.
No, there are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame who have grandkids, great grandkids,
Yeah.
some of them.
Christy, is your last name Graham?
No, it's Van Name.
Van Name?
Yeah.
So the connection would not be quick when you say your name. You have cousins whose last name is Graham,
Yeah.
right? So I would imagine the association comes almost immediately. Are you related to Otto Graham? I would think.
No, kids her age, Bob, they got to be 60 years or older to remember my name, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I'm sure kids would rather be related to Madonna or Cyndi Lauper than Otto Graham, right?
Yeah, I can understand that.
I got a couple of those. They'd rather be related to Don Johnson than anybody named Trumpy.
Yeah.
Okay, with Otto Graham here on Sports Talk, we'll get back to the telephones. Otto will be here until about 7:30. Then he must shove to Dayton for the Bogey Busters from our mutual friend Cy Lauder up there. How many years have you played in that?
Every year. This is the 20th.
20th.
I've played it every year.
And I
In fact,
understand-
the year I had the cancer, very frankly, my biggest concern, talk about cancer, I should have been lying in the hospital after I lost 45 pounds. I should have been more concerned, am I going to live or am I going to die? That's my big concern. Should have been. But I'm supposed to play golf with President Ford and Don Shula and Boots Randolph and Jim McDonald, president of the General Motors and so forth. And what's my big concern? Am I going to get out of the hospital in time to play in the Bogey Buster golf tournament? Now am I going to live or die? So that just shows you how addicted you become to the
Shame
golf
on
tournament
you.
up there.
Shame on you. Okay, Vi, you're next on Sports Talk. Good evening.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, how are you?
And hi, Otto.
Hello there.
I go back to the very first game that the Cleveland Browns played. Do you remember then?
We're having trouble hearing you, Vi. Your phone's cutting in and out. Say it again.
I'm sorry. I've got a good phone.
That's good. Talk a little louder. That's it. Talk louder. Fine.
All right. I go back to the very first game that the Cleveland Browns played when Paul Brown was hired. Can you hear me now?
That was in the. I hear fine. That was in the Rubber Bowl in Akron.
Right.
Right.
Right. I heard this afternoon that the first game you played was with the Phillies. Weren't you one of the original members?
I was in the first game.
No, she said that the first game you played was with the Phillies?
No. I never played professional baseball, and the very first game in NFL played against the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe that's what you're thinking about.
Played against.
You played against the Philadelphia Eagles
Afternoon, you
Yeah.
were saying.
in 1950.
Played against.
Okay, then I'm going back before that, okay?
Okay.
All right, let me bring you up to date, too. I am also an original member of the musical majorettes.
No kidding. You mean to say I when the halftime when you're out there performing, I couldn't watch you?
Of course.
I'm sorry I missed that. I imagine you
Wait
were
a minute.
great.
Wait a minute, fill me in here. I feel left out. What were the musical
I'm
majorettes?
doing this. No, let me
Halftime
and Otto
show.
talk.
Oh, you mean like cheerleaders or
Halftime show. They performed out there.
Ah.
A man named Bird.
Oh, his daughter now does it for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
Shirley Bird. Oh, I
Right,
see.
right.
Okay, I got you, Vi. Now I understand.
All right. What I wanted to say was I go back so far, and when Paul Brown came to Cincinnati, and I said, hey, he's going to have a winning team. He does this. And your team did that. I'm saying this differently than I planned.
That's all right. You're doing well, Vi.
We're just talking.
Yes, we are just talking.
And people don't go back to that and what he did before this and what you guys.
I don't think anyone can discount the number of championships that Otto Graham and the Browns and Paul Brown won. That's hard to discount under any set of circumstances.
We don't hear about that anymore. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Bob.
that's old history. That's why you have to live in the
It's
present,
old,
you know.
And he's okay. What he does isn't the same then. But there's several things I want to say that people don't know about. And then a pregame game in Toledo. It was a little
You mean an exhibition game?
exhibition, right?
Yeah.
And we were there, musical majorettes, and we had practiced on the field. And we had finished, and the Browns came up in their bus, and they were out and whatever they had to do and examine the field. And this man came up with a cast on his leg. And I just want people of Cincinnati to know this. That's for Paul Brown. And he joined us up there, and he turned to me. I was smoking. Laid that cigarette on the ground. And at the time, now, Otto might remember who he is. I think it was from California, and had broken his leg.
I don't recall that offhand, frankly, but
Anyway, I said, of course. I said, well, you're not going to play the whole year. Why can't you just smoke? He said it was respect for Paul Brown. And there's just things like that, and I could talk to you for an hour, Otto, about little things that happen. But I'd like, for the listeners, can you remember the game in New York where you were behind at halftime, 28-0, and back and won the game?
I'm not sure myself.
That game.
But we're going to have to go on further. We'd like to talk to you all night long, but we have about quite a few other phone calls coming in, so we're going to have to go on. But
Bye.
I want to thank
very-
you for calling in very much, and you bring back a lot of memories. And you girls, the majorettes, were gorgeous. Thank you.
Thanks for your phone call, Vi. And who? Jerry, you're next with Otto Graham on Sports Talk. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm a first-time caller, too.
Well, we like first-time
Well,
callers.
a lot of first-time callers here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think
We like new blood.
it's generation calling.
Well,
You
that's
mean
true.
you don't call because it's Trumpy? Gee.
Well, you know, now, I got to take a little exception here, though. I'm not 60. I'm only 44. And well, he was my childhood hero.
Well, you were 14 when I quit playing then.
Yeah, probably so. But I think Trumpy ought to know that you're the reason why there's a lot of mixed support down here for the Bengals.
Oh, I'm well aware of that. I'm well aware of that.
See, the Otto Graham's the reason why. We used to. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and to go to a Cleveland Browns game was a fucking 6-7 hour trip. So back then, say we're talking 52, 53. The only things on TV were Howdy Doody and the Cleveland Browns.
Now, I won't ask for a comparison. But I don't think back in those days I would have driven that far myself. That's a long way to go.
Oh, it took forever.
Yeah.
That was a weekend trip.
Yeah, Otto, that's another point to make. You guys weren't television stars as the football players are today,
No, that's
as my
true.
generation
Yeah,
was.
that's
How many
true.
times did you appear? You didn't have every football game that you played on a weekly basis televised, did you?
No, people always ask me who were my idols when I was growing up and so forth. I say, well, back in my days in high school and college, they didn't have television. And so I didn't have any idols as such because we didn't know that much about professional sports and so forth. They were on the infancy, so we didn't have the same thing we have today.
Tom Mix, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, they were your heroes, right?
Yeah,
Rin Tin Tin.
right.
I know what you mean. Jerry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's all right. I would say they probably had maybe 3 or 4 games a season. They pick out the New York Giants and the 49ers, the big games.
Probably also the big cities. I don't think there were a lot of cities that would. Philadelphia might have. But there weren't a lot of teams either. So Washington, I wouldn't think would have had television then. New York, yes. Chicago, yes. Frisco, yes. Los Angeles, yes. And that's really about it. But that's about all the teams you played, isn't it? I'm sure they didn't
television didn't even start until 49,
something
I think it was.
like that.
So our first couple of years in pro football, they didn't even have TV.
Yeah.
But
think, Otto, you played without commercial. I mean, realize what an advantage that is for your generation as opposed to ours. Go ahead, Jerry. I keep interrupting. That's a big problem I have.
Well, I know we bought our first TV in 1952. So we started watching the Browns from 52 on. And, when you see a team for 15, 16 years before another franchise comes in, you get an allegiance built there. And it is hard to shake. And, I've lived in Cincinnati for about 20 years, and it's my hometown in essence.
When I moved out to Connecticut to go join the Coast Guard Academy as an athletic director and coach, I was very surprised to find out we had all kinds of fans out there because I didn't realize till I went out there that they televised our games, the Browns games, throughout the whole New England area. And we had a great number of fans out there, so that surprised me too, quite honestly.
Well, you remember you guys were like the Celtics of today. You were the big winners.
Yeah.
And, everybody loves a winner.
That's true.
So they televised Browns everywhere.
Yeah. In the late 60s, everyone in the country knew every member of the Green Bay Packers.
That's true. Very true.
In the middle 70s, everybody in the country knew every player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's when you win, people know you and want to know you.
Well, I'm glad you're still a Brown fan. Thanks for calling.
Well, let me ask one more question.
Okay.
When you're talking to your granddaughter there and you showed her the film, we don't see too many of the old Cleveland Browns films from the 50s anymore.
Yeah.
When you go back and you take a look at those films versus players of today, you were an awfully good athlete.
Awfully good.
Awfully good, right. Now, you stop and wonder, was he really that exceptional? Or it seems to me like Paul Brown was very innovative in the 50s. I'd say more innovative than what he was later on in his career. Would you agree with that or not? Do you think he got more conservative as he grew older, or was it just a collection, of very good athletes that produced?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think that Paul Brown was ahead of his time, quite frankly, and then when he got older and came down here, I think other teams had caught up, and there wasn't that much difference between them. And he had great players up there and a great organization, but it's tougher to win these days than it was back in those days because there's less number of teams and so forth, and his organization was the best in professional football, and he got good football players on top of it, and so they dominated, no question about that. And so these days it's a lot tougher, a lot more teams to compete against.
Yeah, Jerry, the other thing you have to consider, too, is back in the 50s, professional football advanced by giant strides with full-time coaching staff and film study and just dumb things like that are everyday occurrences now in professional football. The innovations today are baby steps. because it's just about innovated out.
Yeah.
There's not much else. The
Not
next
much else.
generation,
Nothing new you can come up with.
yeah, the next generation is going to look like a spaceman when it comes to equipment, and that's really about it.
Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Enjoyed talking
Jerry,
to you.
thanks for calling. Otto, let me ask you the big question here. We got other people that want to talk to you, but I hear a lot of people of my generation and the generation before me say we were a lot tougher than the guys today. We played harder, we hit harder, we did this, we did that. I don't believe them. I
don't believe it either.
I did 45 football games last year. I retired 8 years ago. Otto, I'm telling you, I could not survive the collisions that they have on the field today. I really couldn't. Do you think you could?
I agree with you, Bob. They're bigger and stronger and faster. They're tougher today. I don't think, as a group, they have the same dedication as we had back in our day, because we would play for the love of it. I think the finances are more of a factor today, and there's a lot more squabbling over or contracts and so forth and so on. And if a guy is unhappy, it shows, I guess, at times and so forth. But I've always felt that any athlete at all, when he gets out there on that field, does not want to perform poorly. He's a ham to some degree. He wants to do well out there in front of 80,000 people. So he's going to put out when he's out there in the football field. But off the practice field and away from it and so forth, the same dedication probably isn't there that was back in our day.
Except that when I played, it was basically a 10-month-a-year, maybe 9-month-a-year job. When you played, it was probably 7 months a year. These guys are now playing, it's 365 days a year.
Off-season, they have to work just as hard.
Absolutely. The minute the season ends, they prepare for the next season with weightlifting, and that's really changed.
That's no question about it.
Okay, back to the phones we go. Glad we agree there. And Brian, you're next with Otto Graham. Go ahead.
I remember as a kid getting a booklet put out by the Browns which showed each Browns player demonstrating how to play his position, except that at quarterback they had to use the safety, Cliff Lewis, because, Otto, you apparently held your hands wrong or something. Ever change that?
Blanton Collier, who later became a head coach of the Browns, felt that, and I agree with him, that all quarterbacks on the team should have their same hand up. And I couldn't agree more, because when I first started playing football with the Browns, there had been nobody of experience teaching me. So I just did it by just instinct, and being a right-handed thrower and so forth. Playing baseball, I would trap the ball in my left hand and throw with my right. So I trapped the ball in my left hand, put my left hand on the left hand up. And Blanton felt that the right hand should be up, and the center, of course, is not going to remember in a ball game which hand is up, so there'll be a lot of fumbles. So I don't think it makes any difference which hand is up, but it makes all the difference in the world that all quarterbacks on the same team have to have the same hand up. That's the most important thing.
So he didn't use you as a demonstrator?
At first, that's correct.
At first. Now, wait a minute. When you played quarterback...
I shifted. I changed.
You did change.
I changed.
I was going to ask you if football advanced enough that the center would automatically put the laces at a certain spot, so when he snapped it to your hand, your laces are right on it?
That's true. But I always told them that where the laces were, it made no difference to me, because as I go back to throw the ball, I'm turning the ball over my hand anyway, trying to find the most comfortable spot. It's instinct. You don't think about it, but you do it. Just turn the ball around your hand, trying to find a spot to get the best grip on it.
Brian, anything else?
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, he said Marion Motley was the best fullback he ever seen. Actually, I remember...
I didn't say the best fullback I ever seen. I said the best fullback to play for the Browns.
I liked watching Chick Chigati run. He played for a short period of time.
Oh, Chick was a good fullback, no question about it. Chick, of course, he's not dead now, but Chick was he loved life. He had a good time, both on and off the field, as you probably know.
Yes, I heard that.
Brian.
The reason I was prompted to call was I heard you mention that someone named Aspinall was going to call you.
Yep.
Well, that's my name, but I'm the only one around with that name, so I was kind of curious.
Well, there's Jim Aspinall somewhere around just that area, so he's a good friend of mine from up in Ohio, Bay Village area up there.
I see.
Brian, thanks for your phone call. Bye-bye. Otto Graham is our guest, 24 after the hour, and Gary, it's your turn with Otto Graham. Go ahead.
Okay, Otto?
Yes.
The best quarterback in football, Bob. And let me tell you something. When Otto threw short to Dub Jones and he went long to Dante Lavelli, he was the best quarterback there was. And I think in this day and time, despite your previous comment, as far as the guys putting out and the guys playing for the Bucks or for the show, I'll tell you, Otto is the best in the game.
Well,
Say thank you, Otto.
Thank you.
There you
Yes,
go.
that's all I'll say. Thank you. I don't agree with you, but thank you anyway.
Now, my question was, Otto, your best receiver in the game. You threw short to Dub Jones. You always went long to Lavelli, and if everything else failed, then Motley came up the middle.
I tell you,
Please.
quite honestly, the best receiver I had was the guy who was open. I gave the ball to somebody because I did not want that thing. You get killed back there, so whoever got open, I threw him the ball. It's that simple.
Well, Bob, I'll tell you what, he's being modest because he was the best in the game, and he deserves to be where he is today.
We agree. No argument, Gary.
Okay, sir.
Thanks for your phone call.
Okay.
Hank, it's your turn with Otto Graham.
Hi,
Go ahead.
how are you? I'm
Fine,
a
thank
first-time
you.
caller.
Okay, pleasure to have you on the air.
Good to be here. I grew up in northern Ohio, and I was a big fan of the Browns. I remember even when the Rochester Royals came to play the Youngstown Bears. Otto, it's a real pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Here's kind of an Otto Graham, Paul Brown story that I think is kind of interesting. Somebody may have mentioned this game earlier. I've been hearing parts of the show. But in 46 or 47, I remember quite distinctly, the Browns were playing the New York Yankees, who had Buddy Young and Spec Sanders. And Otto, you guys were down 28-0 in the first half. You remember that game?
Very well, except it wasn't 28-0. It was 28-0 at one point, but
okay, that's true.
halftime was
That's true.
28-7.
Here's my story. And that was one of the greatest comebacks because we were kids in my hometown, and we were just playing something one Sunday afternoon, and we thought you guys were dead, but you came back and tied. But here's the Paul Brown Otto story. The year the Bengals won the Super Bowl, played in the Super Bowl, I had occasion, because of my work, to spend some time with the Bengals. And one day on Tuesday, when everybody was gone, I happened to meet Paul Brown, and I told him I was from Northern Ohio and so forth, and I told him about this game, and of course he corrected me like you did. But I think the interesting thing was, after he began discussing the game, he turned to the Gray, I think was your equipment manager, and
Tom
he
Gray.
proceeded to tell me and your equipment man the exact plays he used in the second half to ultimately tie the game. He said Graham did this, and Lavelli did this, and Speedy did this, and Dub Jones did this. And I thought that was an amazing bit of recollection. Do you recall what happened that pulled that game out, Otto?
I'll tell you what really caused it, in my opinion. We had clinched our division championship, so we did not have to win the ball game. The Yankees had to win the ball game in order to play in the championship. And consequently, we were playing hard, but not with the same intensity that you play if you had to win the ball game, not on purpose. But they, after it got way ahead, they began to make a lot of wisecracks and mouth off to us. And very honestly, that got us very upset. So the one thing I learned from that game, when you have somebody down, pat them on the back and say, nice try, nice tackle, you don't get them all fired up. They got us fired up, and we took the attitude, we'll show you, bum, we can play football. We came back in the second half ready to kill anybody, and if they had kept quiet and been nice to us, we had lost the ball game. But we came back determined. And if that game had lasted another 2 or 3 minutes, we would have beaten them. So second half, we played with the intensity we did not have in the first half.
I would imagine one of those glassy-eyed stares over those arched eyebrows at halftime that I distinctly remember from Mr. Paul E. Brown might have had something to do with it.
You've seen those eyes too, huh?
Right through me.
I'll tell you one thing,
Bob.
I'll tell you one thing, Bob. In our championship game in 1950, our first year, we had marched down the field. We're behind, and one point, and we have a chance to win the ball game, and we're down there within field goal range, and I ran a quarterback draw, got blindsided, and fumbled the ball. We're close enough for a field goal now. I came off the sideline, and I fully expected Paul to look at me with those cold blue eyes of his, and yet he patted me in the back, said, "Don't worry, Osbrooks will get him," and that pat on the back really meant so much to me. And when our defense held them, and they punted, we came back and we moved 80 yards, I guess it was, in about a minute and a half, and got in the spot for the next field goal that goes to kick to tie the ball game. So Paul knew when to kick you in the butt and when to pat you in the shoulder and so forth. That's a big part of coaching, quite frankly.
Hank, thanks a lot for your phone call. What line did you say Chris was on? Okay, Chris, you're next with Otto Graham. Go ahead. Thanks for patiently waiting.
Thank you. First-time caller. Bob, I really appreciate your show.
Good.
I'm a graduate of Waukegan Township High School in Waukegan,
You've got to be kidding. What's your name again?
Chris Chris Rodbrough.
Okay.
You used to, when I was a kid, we always came into the gymnasium, and they had all the all-state players for various sports in the inside the gym. They had these gigantic pictures, and of course you were there. The story, if I remember right, because I always tell everybody I'm from Waukegan, Illinois, the hometown of Jack Benny and Otto Graham. So there are a lot of people that still remember you. But did you play? I know you played basketball. I think you're all-state basketball, all-state baseball. Did you play football in high school? Because we were told.
I was not a baseball player, and I was a football. I was an all-state football player. I was a third-team all-state football player in high school. Pat Harmon, in fact, who has a book here in Bob's area here, that was the guy who helped pick me there. And I was a first-team all-state, but I did not. I went off for track. I played baseball in college, quite honestly.
Okay, well, the story was that your dad, I think, retired just about when I was in high school.
Yeah, he was the band director, and I always kid everybody and say that at halftime of the football games, I'd go play in the marching band with my football uniform on. I didn't do it, of course, but I used to kid about it.
Well, I think that's where the story got mixed up, because I think we always thought you played somehow down the years that you played in the band and didn't play football. The other thing is I used to make a lot of money off you when I was a kid, because I caddied at Glen Forest Country Club. And you must have come into town a lot and played golf, because at night all the caddies would go down to the water hole, and we would dig out all these balls, and we'd find all these Otto Graham balls, and they had Poto.
Shame on you. Shame on you. You didn't have to call and tell all that about
Otto plays better than that now, though, Chris. He plays a lot better than that now.
But since you were so famous, and of course being from Waukegan, and so I would collect these balls, and they had your name on them, and we'd sell them for $75.
I used to hand them out to everybody. That's why. That's the reason they all. I never hit a ball in the water in my life. You know that.
Come on.
Well, we always wondered
if you believe that, you're crazy.
You're not that good.
You're right. I'm not.
But like Titleist or something, but the Poto golf ball was the Walgreen golf ball, and we were kind of surprised. Was that just your ball that you used, or were you getting paid to put?
I used any kind of a golf ball they'd give me.
Never
bought one in my life.
The operative word is give. Chris, thanks for your phone call.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. What line did you say, Doug? One last call. Bob, you're last tonight with Otto Graham. Then he's got to shove to date, and go ahead. Thanks for patiently waiting.
Okay, Otto. Nice talking with you.
Thank you.
Going back to maybe the late 40s, early 50s, when you would play Buffalo, we had a local boy, George Ratterman by name.
Yes, you did.
With Buffalo. And we hear some crazy stories about things that George would do. I happened to go to high school with him. I wonder if you might have any recollection of those games.
Very much. George Ratterman was my backup quarterback for a couple of years there, and he was a real character. No question about that. He did so many things with the Browns that, some things I can't talk about on the air, but I recall one time he was down in the office, and the coaches had gotten together and made up the game plan for the following week, and they did that at the field, actually, out in our practice field, and he was supposed to, George said, "I'll take this down to the office for they can be printed up for the following day when the team met." So when the information got back to the team, they handed out, George had changed a few words here and there and so forth, and everybody in the place was howling. For example, they said this guy was a halfback. They said, for example, if you don't tackle him, he will run for a touchdown. And obviously, and things like that. And he had the place in an uproar. He was a real character, but he was a thin type of guy, but yet a great athlete, and a better character never existed than George Ratterman. And I guess he's out in the Denver area right now, by the way.
Well, nice talking with you.
Thank you very much.
Bob, thanks for your phone call. Otto, it's been a pleasure having you here, and we appreciate Warner Lambert bringing you in, and also Cy Lauder for inviting you to the area for the Bogey Busters tournament. And I still marvel at your appearance, sir. You look terrific, and
well,
stay
Bob,
healthy.
For a guy 41, you look great yourself.
I just have the right clothes on.
I enjoyed being on. I've known you for many, many years, and I've admired you for all you've done, and it's quite obvious you're doing very well in this profession, and so
you
keep
help.
up the good work.
You help.
But I've enjoyed being here very much, and I just hope that people listening in today on our getting serious just for a second, will actually, older people will take the time to get their checkups and so forth and so on, and because cancer, as we said earlier, does not discriminate, and if one person, as I said earlier, will take the time to go see the doctor, and we can save one person's life, then my trip here, Bob, is well worthwhile.
Good. Christy, Bev, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Drive carefully up to date and have fun.
I will.
All right.
Thank
Otto
you.
Graham, formerly of the Cleveland Browns and the Coast Guard Academy, now retired at Lucky Stiff. We'll be back with more sports talk after this.